What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Word on Woodward presented by Raymond. Empower your purpose with Raymond. I'm Daniela Bruce, soon to be joined by Art Regner and Carly Johnston. Wherever you're watching today, make sure you're liking, subscribing, and turning on your live notifications so you don't miss a single second of the Word on Woodward. And if you want to get involved in today's show with some thoughts, comments, questions, whatever it might be, use the hashtag Word on Woodward, and we will do our best to get your thoughts on the show. We've got a lot of great guests joining us today. As always, Dan Dickerson will be joining us shortly for the mailbag. We have interviews with former Tiger Nate Robertson, Red Wings defenseman Troy Stetcher, MLB.com's Jason Beck, and 1997 Stanley Cup champion and Conn Smythe winner Mike Vernon will join Art for the headliner later in the show. And speaking of Art, today is a very special day. It is Art Regner's 30th birthday. Happy birthday, Art.
Yeah, thank you there, Daniela. I really appreciate it. Yes, November 5th. Remember the 5th of November, Guy Fawkes Day. It's a holiday in England. So if I were in London right now, I would probably be masked up, social distanced in a pub, unless they've shut England down again. So, and I'd be 6 hours ahead. It'd be a little after 6 o'clock at night. So I would be well toasted probably by that time. So thank you. I am overwhelmed, and I've got a confession to make. I did not prep for this show at all. I mean, poor Mark is going through, hey, did you look at the free agent list? And it's like, should I tell him or should I just spring it on him? And I'm springing it on him. I don't know. I have no idea about the baseball free agents. I haven't looked at it, but I will say something. It's my birthday.
I know a little bit.
Well, I'm going to tell you what I've really found out is in Facebook alone, I have almost 400 friends wish me happy birthday right now. And I've had people throughout my life call me this morning. I spoke with one Daniela Bruce earlier today. And the thing that I'm finding, people that I work with WHMI out in Howell when I was AJ Turner, my good buddy David Goldsworthy, I think in this COVID era, people are reaching out more. And even because we can't be together, so they're really comfortable calling, or people want to Zoom call with me and talk to me. I mean, it's really been kind of touching. So I got kind of caught up in all of that, and saying, well, should I? God, and trust me, when you're liking everybody who's wishing you happy birthday on Facebook, you think, okay, is that cheap, or should I? Yeah, that's a lot of people. And, and there's more, and I do appreciate it. Trust me. And then people just reaching out, all longtime friends and buddies and all that kind of stuff. So it has been crazy. So usually my prep time was, me just reaching out to people and thanking them for being so kind to me. So let's wing it. I'm ready.
Right,
not that I don't prep that much anyway. I'll be honest with you. So let's just go. Hey, I'm an honest person. I really am. I'm telling you right where I'm coming from all the time. So, and I'm sure that virtually at least once a show, I give our fine producer, Mark Milligan, a stroke. But, I'm sorry, Mark. I apologize. And I know he's really into baseball. He's really into this free agents. Hey, I don't know.
Maybe he'll give you a pass for your birthday. I can't. I hope, but he might. So
I'm hoping so. And hopefully Steve Yzerman isn't watching because he would be disgusted.
Well, speaking of Steve Yzerman, that leads us into the big three for today.
Great transition.
And I know it was a good transition. Thank you, Art. And I know you didn't plan that because you didn't prep. But anyway, so we're going to talk a little bit about Steve Yzerman's press conference the other day. He joined us after he signed Anthony Mantha to that 4-year deal. And I know you will have a lot to say about this, prep or not. But yes, he did join us, talked about the deals that he did sign with both Tyler Bertuzzi and Anthony Mantha. He talked about a little bit more throughout that press conference too. But here is what he had to say when he was asked what he wants to see out of Anthony Mantha next season.
Our hope is Anthony remains healthy. He's an important player, an impact player. And he's we need him on the ice. So again, I think there's still a lot. These guys are all young guys, improving their overall game, both ends of the rink, and the better teams have good habits. Was managing the puck, simple things, managing the puck, shift length, you name it. That goes for all our guys. The good teams have good habits, and we're trying to instill that as a group, and that's up to the coaches and to work with the players. So that's not specific to Anthony Mantha. It goes for everyone. But number one for Anthony is really, to train and make sure he's in the best shape he possibly can be, and give him a chance to stay healthy.
So yes, we all want Anthony Mantha to stay healthy next season and, of course, improve. One other thing that Steve Yzerman pointed out during that press conference when he was asked about Tyler Bertuzzi's contract and the one-year deal that they did come to terms on during arbitration, is that he did want to sign Tyler Bertuzzi to a longer deal before arbitration, obviously, but they could not come to that agreement. And I think that's really important just because it proves that Steve Yzerman notices that the core of this team is Tyler Bertuzzi, Anthony Mantha, and of course, Dylan Larkin.
Well, if you're looking at Bertuzzi, Larkin, and Mantha being the big three, notice how I got the segment name in there, Daniela. And no prep at work at all. If you're looking at it that way, in a strange sense, this is going to fall nicely for the Red Wings, because if Tyler performs well, and I think we all believe he will next season, Steve will sign him to a long-term deal. And I think what was interesting, if you go back to what Mantha actually said, Steve didn't want Dylan Larkin and Anthony Mantha to be free agents at the same time. Well, I'm sure he doesn't want that as well with Tyler Bertuzzi. Like when Larkin's deal's up, he doesn't want Bertuzzi to be a free agent when Anthony's deal's up. So I think he's going to try to space it where each year he may have to deal with one big contract, one big signing. And I'm under the impression that Dylan, obviously, the BT Express, obviously, Tyler Bertuzzi, mostly, obviously, that those are going to be guys that he's going to build the team around, and that's going to be his core as far as the forward core, along with guys like Philip Zadina. I'm not going to give up on him. I thought what was interesting, that what Steve talked about was, first of all, Steve, I got to tell you, out of all your Red Wing gear, and I've never seen you wear as much Red Wing gear as you have since we started doing Zoom calls. The most Red Wing gear I used to see Steve Yzerman in was when he was in his uniform. Trust me. He wasn't like Mr. Red Wing, hey, I play for the Wings. I guess he didn't have to because he was Steve Yzerman. But that's a good look on you. I like that red hoodie. With that said, I thought that what he's talking about building a core and a foundation. And obviously Anthony is part of that. And it's important, but what he's doing now, I think he has a lineup that he's at least comfortable with. He knows it's not great, but now it's up to the players and the coaching staff to now start building this team the Red Wing way. They're starting to take a step up the rebuilding block or the rebuilding stairs. And I thought that was really very important. As far as Anthony staying healthy, obviously he's gotten in trouble with his fists. He's 6'5". I think he's pushing 250. He told me that he'll be down to like 230 once the season begins. He's a mammoth guy. He's the Express for a reason, because he can bowl over people, and he's a supremely talented player. I think, and I've said this before, I think his injury days are behind him. I'm some sort of hockey soothsayer, but I really do. I think, he knows, he's getting paid a lot of money right now. He knows why he's here. He's going to score. He's going to score I think he's a 40-goal scorer when healthy. I think, he himself, not that he looks to get injured, he's not going to be the enforcer. He's not going to be the guy that's going to go in there. Now, look, again, and I'm going to say this one more time because I'm still incensed about it. Jake Muzzin's cheap shot was not Anthony Mantha fighting. It was him just going in, trying to break up a scrum. Certainly at 6'5", 240, he was being an intimidating presence. It was a cheap shot by Muzzin, who punctured his lung, and that's why he was out. That had nothing to do with fighting. That had something to do with him sticking up for a teammate. And 10 out of 10 times, the BT Express is always going to stand up for a teammate. That's who he is. I don't want that to be taken away from him, because that will affect his game. So maybe you're going to have to live with the bad decision, but I guess what I'm leading to is the bad decisions that he makes where, he wants to pulverize a guy, which he can do, will be few and far between. And I think you're going to see that. I think this is a great deal for both teams. I'm excited to have the BT Express here for 4 more years, and they'll take care of Tyler, and then they'll get that top line. All those guys will be getting into their prime. They'll all be happy. They'll all be signed, and the Red Wings will be getting better. It's a perfect union.
It is definitely an exciting time to be a Red Wings fan. Of course, we are hoping that we get some news out of the NHL soon, that the Red Wings will be starting soon. So yes, an exciting time, and we're looking forward to the Red Wings taking the ice again. Now we are going to move on to our second topic of today's Big Three, where friend of the show, Cody Stavenhagen, wrote an article for The Athletic about the Tigers' free agency shopping list, so to speak. And he wrote about every position and what the Tigers could use at every position. But the positions that we have really talked about on the show have been catcher, second base, and starting pitching. Art, of those three, which do you think will be the most important for the Tigers?
Yeah, I really have thought about this, and and I'm still kind of really into what Chris McCoskey said about arms. A lot of arms, not because no one pitched a lot of innings last year, so you're going to have kind of a plethora of starting pitchers, guys that can go. And the Tigers are deep in pitching. We know they have a lot of prospects. I am going to say at this point, I think catcher is the most important position for them to get because of those young arms. Now, I think that catcher is going to be James McCann. I think they're really going to go out and try to bring James McCann back home. Let's put it this way. If James McCann would have developed the offense that he developed as a White Sox, and remember, that White Sox Park or whatever they call it, Real Deal Field or whatever, I call it Old Comiskey Park still, what is it, New Era, New Deal? Let's make a deal rate. Ballpark. Guaranteed. Thank you. Guaranteed rate field. Whatever. I'm always going to take a shot at Chicago, no matter what. But
and Toronto.
And that's kind of that's a little bit of a bandbox. It's not Comerica Park, but if he would have been more of a consistent hitter, I don't think he ever would have left Detroit. He liked Detroit. Detroit, obviously, the organization loved him. So if I were Al Avila, I would probably be calling James McCann up and just putting a feeler out, even though I did read a few articles how much he really does enjoy being in Chicago. It's more, he lives in like the downtown area. It was more of a suburban environment here in Detroit. So, and he loved both of them, by the way. I mean, he wasn't saying one was better than the other. It was just different. The way he's living in Chicago is different than the way he lived here in Detroit. But and that could be a factor. But what I'm saying is that's the guy that I would target right now. Bring James McCann back home. Let him work with that young pitching staff. He's familiar with the Tigers, obviously, and he's played against the Tigers. As a White Sox. I mean, they play 18 times a year, and except during the COVID thing. So that's what I would do. That's the one position that I would target, James McCann, because I actually know something about him.
Thankfully, today we have two guys that know a lot about the Tigers and Major League Baseball as a whole. We're going to have Dan Dickerson join us for the mailbag, and MLB.com's Jason Beck will join us later for Breast Street Beat. So we will bring this conversation back up later in the show. Now we're going to move on to our third and final topic of the Big Three for today, and we're going to talk about the OHL and the AHL. Art, this news is a little bit older. It might be a week old now, but they have both pegged starting dates of February 5th. For the leagues. And actually, Steve Yzerman mentioned this in his press conference. I think it was your question, actually, Art, where you asked him about the AHL. And he said he's hopeful and he's optimistic about it. Obviously, we have to make sure there's no major setbacks when it comes to COVID-19, but he's optimistic that it's going to happen early February.
Yeah, I was surprised because, Steve's on this committee of NHL general managers that is advising, I guess, the AHL. I would imagine the AHL just brings what we're thinking, and these guys are obviously heavy hitters in the NHL, and they're saying, yeah, that sounds good, or you think it's going to happen. I thought the most important thing that Steve said about that is you can tell he wants an AHL season to begin. He really does, and if everything is in February, by the time they really get into, depending on how many games they play in the AHL, a lot of the guys that are in Europe that are on loan or that are playing there, their seasons will end, which should coincide with the end of the AHL season and hopefully a playoff run for the Grand Rapids Griffins, which is extremely important in the development of all the number one picks and high-end elite-level talent they're going to have on that Grand Rapids roster once they bring them all together from, various parts in the world where they're playing right now. So, but he was really, really insightful yesterday because he said, look, if they're not going to play with fans, is it even worth it for them to even open up and play? Because they are a ticket revenue generated sport. And that was, I thought, interesting. That's why I asked him the question about expanding rosters, because if there's no AHL season and the schedule's compressed, would the league consider expanding the rosters from 23 up to 30 or something like that, meaning that they would bring these guys back because they'd be practicing with the Red Wings, and in a compressed schedule, you could see Joe Veleno make his, I'm not saying this is going to happen, make his NHL debut. You can see, Michael Rasmussen obviously being part of the team, and so I think that February starting date is a really, really hopeful starting date. I'd love to see it. If the AHL is able to pull this off, and the OHL, although I guess there's no body checking, we can get into that a little bit later. But with that's going to be a weird hockey game. But with that said, we're going to have to see how the next couple of months play out as far as the as COVID-19 and where we're at, and hopefully we'll start to get more of a better handle on it. Everything will start to come together a little bit more. There'll be more questions answered than asked, so to speak. And I'm hopeful, but I thought Steve was realistic. He was optimistic that will happen, but he also put a couple caveats in there about, hey, if they're not going to have fans, it might not be worth it for them to open up this year. And I'm kind of paraphrasing what he said.
I didn't expect you to exact quote, Art, but of course we will keep you updated right here on the Word on Woodward when we hear any news regarding the AHL, OHL, and even the NHL. And that wraps it up for today's Big Three. A big thank you to Chevy Cares. That is why Chevy Clean dealers are committed to using enhanced vehicle cleaning measures with CDC-approved cleansers before delivering your vehicle after purchase or service. So when you're ready, you can find new roads with confidence. And we're going to welcome our first guest on today's show, and we're going to get into the mailbag delivered to you by Little Caesars. And as promised, we're going to bring in some better prepared baseball minds. Dan Dickerson joining us now. Dan, you got to save Art here. I don't know if he started drinking early for his birthday and celebrated last night or what's going on, but
he's on his own. But here's what I like about Art. He took full responsibility. He's not blaming, the dog ate my homework. No. He's just reveling in all of those nice people telling him happy birthday, all his Facebook friends.
That's very true.
He didn't have time to look at stuff for the show. It happens.
Hey, I had to put it on the back burner. I took some time for me. It was me time today.
It's important. I've read a lot of articles about this, Art. It's important to have me time in these trying times.
Exactly. And I finally took some time out for me. I took a step back, and instead of the world me going into the world, I'm letting the world come to me.
Sure. All right. With that being said.
Boy, what a load of BS that was. But it sounded good. It sounded good.
Always sounds good. Always sounds good coming out of you, Art.
That's 20 plus years of radio. So.
Can confirm. Okay. Anyway, Dan, question number one for you. We'll get right into some free agency talk. Alex from Lake Oregon asks, who is a more likely reunion for the Tigers? James McCann or Rick Porcello?
Well, Art, even with no prep, I think did hit the nail on the head on this one. I think James McCann is a very likely target. I have no idea how likely it would be that the Tigers sign him. You try to get a feel for, I think, Fangraphs does a great job every year of trying to predict crowdsourcing what the average contract is going to be for the top free agents. And this year, the big question is it going to be a whole bunch of guys who get 1-year deals because of this strange season? And then some guys get long-term deals, or will it be a more typical offseason? I think the former is the way we're going to see a lot of 1-year deals or shorter deals than you would have had after, say, a normal season because of all the uncertainty in the finances for owners going into next year. Having said that, James McCann, the projected contract, 2 years, $14 million. This is a guy, the reason I think Art's right, and you hate to say it for a guy who didn't prep at all for this show, but the reason I think he's right is James McCann is an improved defensive catcher, +9 defensive runs saved last year, and this was Chicago, -9 defensive runs saved the 2 previous years, his last 2 years with the Tigers. He's a better offense. Let's face it, offense is what they need out of that position, and Austin Romine he'd shown he had a decent bat in a reserve role with the Yankees for a couple of years. He just really struggled down the stretch. 47 strikeouts, 4 walks total for him for the year. They need to get more out of that. Al Avila has said that. James McCann, definitely an improved hitter since he's gone to Chicago. He's improved defensively. You talked about the handling a young staff. The leadership qualities are off the chart. He's affordable. I just think, if it's not a slam dunk, you would certainly think that's a top target because there's no obvious in-house solution. And they did sign, as much as he might like Chicago, they did sign Yasmani Grandal to a 4-year deal last year. So he's not going to be the number one guy, even though they put Grandal at first and DH, I know. So anyway, I think could be very attractive to have him back here and allow maybe one of those guys to develop fully. And Jake Rogers, I know, is getting into his mid-20s, but it allows him to maybe start that reserve role and get that bat going and show that he can be the number one catcher 2 years from now.
Art, for your question, we are going to stay on free agency, but this time for the Red Wings. Nora from Troy asked, Steve mentioned potentially adding a free agent. Is this an option, or do you think he is targeting someone specific?
I don't think he's targeting anybody. I think, as far as trades and free agency, I think Steve was pretty clear. He's always open. You always want to make your team better. So if something comes his way or depending on how it plays out once the Red Wings begin to practice, unfortunately, injuries is always a factor. I think this. I think if Steve is looking for anything, it's probably another team that's up against the salary cap and has to, much like the Mark Stahl deal, has to unload a contract because the Red Wings have cap room. Steve's not going to spend and go up to the ceiling of the cap just to go up to the ceiling. If they don't hit that, if they have, $10 million or whatever it is under the cap, he's that might be just $10 million that he's just going to sit there with. So I think he's not going to do anything unless a team comes to him and says, will you take this contract on? And then Steve will say, sure, I'll take this contract on because it's going to be an expiring deal. They're going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of next season. And then at the trade deadline, much like I think is going to happen to Mark Stahl, unless he, is Norris Trophy-like, I think Steve will trade that for another asset. Plus, in the deal that he will make, much like the Mark Stahl deal, I know I keep saying that a lot, but I think that he will take on a big veteran contract, which is worth a lot of money, big cap hit, trade that player at the trade deadline, but also in that deal, much like the Mark Stahl deal, he'll get like a high round draft pick, probably shoot for a second, no lower than a third, and then he will trade Stahl and whomever this player is, if he makes this deal, I think for more draft picks. So what's this all leading to? Next year on draft day and night, those 2 days, the Red Wings could have like 15 picks or something. That's what he's doing. It's a law of averages. Yeah, that's why people get in like lotto clubs. Like you get 35 people together and they buy like 1,000 tickets, and then then they win the jackpot, and then they think, oh my God, I got to split it 35 ways. I mean, that's not all that much, but but anyway, but I won the lotto. But if you look at it that way, I think that's what Steve's going to do. He wants to acquire assets. So I don't think, unless, and I'll just use this because I know Red Wing fans are thinking this. I get this asked all the time. If Andreas Athanasiou came up to Steve and said, look, you know what I can do? I know you traded me. I have friends on this team. Will you give me a shot for, such and such X amount? Let me prove myself. I'd like to prove myself in a Red Wing uniform. I'm not saying that's going to happen. If some player of that ilk came to him, depending where the Red Wings are at or where Steve thinks they're at, maybe he would do that. I'm not saying Athanasiou's coming back. I'm not. But I'm just saying that would be what he would do. But more likely, the likely case scenario would be for him to have another team approach him and say, can you take this contract off our hands? If you take that, we'll give you a second-round pick. And then at the trade deadline, Steve will move that veteran guy and get more picks. I think, which I think, again, is a brilliant strategy. I cannot tell you, and I cannot tell you how impressed I have been with Steve Yzerman as general manager of the Red Wings. Okay, granted, I've always liked him. I really, he was one of the toughest players I've ever seen, one of the most underrated superstars. But the job that he is doing as GM of the Red Wings is freaking phenomenal. And to Pete S. out there, I am not lit. I haven't had a drink.
I don't know if I believe you. I don't know.
I'm just, when people keep telling you happy birthday, it's kind of an exhilarating feeling. I can't believe it. I mean, it's like people I haven't seen or heard from years. I mean, of course, Double D hasn't wished me a happy birthday, and I know his birthday's coming up too. So, what goes around comes around, Double D.
Just keep me humble, Art.
Can I wish it to you now, because I'm not on Facebook. I'm out. I'm out on Facebook. Can I wish it to you now?
Yeah, sure. Please do.
Happy birthday, buddy.
Thank you, Dan. It was sincere and heartfelt. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna start tearing up.
All right, we're going to move on to Dan's question. Question number 3 from Waterford asks, with the left side of the infield flush with talent and the Tigers drafting more, what do you think the plan for Isaac Paredes is? I like this question. We haven't talked about Isaac Paredes much since the end of the season.
I do too, and I think it's a really interesting question. It seemed like, here's what you noticed about Isaac Paredes. He's the rare guy who comes up from the minor league with a real idea of the strike zone, plate discipline, walked almost as much as he struck out in the minor leagues. The list of kids, youngsters who come up and do that, it's a small list. And you see here his grand slam home run, his first major league home run early on. You saw the potential, but I think that's not a small thing, that discipline on a team that doesn't have much. He struggled down the stretch. There's no question about it. But you saw what everybody was excited about in some of his at-bats, even when he didn't get a hit, even when he was struggling. He went through a 2 for 36 stretch. I think that then he bounced back with a 10 for 30 stretch. So this is a kid who's got some toughness to him. The league adjusted to him. He adjusted back. I don't know if that means he's the leading candidate to start at third base going into next year. Probably, if he has a good spring, because I don't think they want to move Jamer back to third base. With no obvious solution at first base unless you bring back a CJ Cron. So I think he gets that shot. I still think there is absolute upside. You understand why people are excited, because there's pop in his bat to go with the plate discipline. He, a learning curve this year, but he showed in the end that he knows how to adjust when the league adjusts to him. But the point is a good one. With all the draft picks that the Tigers have made on that left side of the infield, it seems like they've got about 5 shortstops and 4 third basemen right now coming up to the minor leagues. It's not that big. It's a big number. You took Spencer Torkelson to first baseman and you made him a third baseman, and you drafted his teammate Gage Workman. You're putting him at shortstop, but he's a third baseman. You've got Trey Cruz. I mean, you can go right down the list. It's a pretty deep list. And remember, you've already got Willie Castro, who they clearly want. If he can just field his position at a average level, they, I think, want him to be their future shortstop. So it's a really interesting question. It's a logjam, and I think you're always thinking in the back of the mind, you can always move a guy back to first base like a Spencer Torkelson, or turn somebody else if there's not a spot for him obvious. If you like the bat, you can put him back at first base as well. Maybe Jamer goes back to third. But for the most part, I would say Isaac Paredes gets a shot to be the starting third baseman out of spring training. He would have to have a good spring, I think, to do that. I think it's also very likely that you could move Jamer back to third because he was good defensively there, and sign a first baseman in the offseason.
Well,
and
Dan,
Danielle, can I just ask you about free agency?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because there's always interest in reunions with former Tigers. And just one thing I meant to mention when we were talking about Rick Porcello and James McCann, who's the more likely reunion, we talked about James McCann. Here's another one to keep an eye on, who I had no idea he had such a good year in his 26 innings, and that's Drew Smiley. Drew Smiley had Tommy John surgery that wiped out 2017, 2018. Came back in 2019, did not pitch especially well. Here's what Drew Smiley brings. He's still in his early 30s, not much mileage on that arm post Tommy John. He's a better strike thrower this year in his 26 innings. Velocity is up to a career high, not even close. 94 miles an hour on the fastball. That's up almost 3 miles an hour from pre-Tommy John surgery. He gets a lot of swings and misses with command. That is an intriguing signing possibility for the Tigers. Early 30s, won't cost you much, coming off a big year with lots of swings and misses.
Yes, Art.
Yeah, I was wondering what happened to him. With Drew Smiley, I was thinking, wow, Tampa's in the World Series. Is he still with the whom I still call the Devil Rays? But is he still with the Rays or not? That would be intriguing because Drew Smiley was a pretty darn good pitcher for the Tigers. And then when they moved him, I mean, it was a big deal too. And so I like that idea. And Porcello coming back. I think by the time he was 24, he'd already won like 200 major league games or something. I mean, he's a little bit underrated, although he should not have won the Cy Young Award. Kate Upton, Michigan's own Kate Upton, I agree with you. Your husband, Justin Verlander, should have won that award, not Rick Porcello. You know what I'm talking about, Double D.
Unfortunately, yes.
Well, Dan, I do like that too, especially with losing Nick Ramirez. He's a free agent too, so there's a lefty where Drew Smiley could slide in and fit in that spot. It's a very interesting point. I'm glad you did your homework last night, so very happy to have you on the show today.
I am too.
Question 4, you guys. This one is to both of you. Art, you can answer first. James from Toledo asks, MLB award winners are coming next week. Taking away the obvious of MVP, which would you rather have on your team? Rookie of the Year, Cy Young winner, or Manager of the Year?
Well, I'm looking at next year, let's say. That's the way I'm approaching this question, because I know that the Tigers eventually are going to have at least back-to-back Rookie of the Year winners in Spencer Torkelson, Unleash the Torque, and Riley Green. Those guys are definitely Rookies of the Year. I also know that A.J. Hinch is not going to be winning Manager of the Year next year, no matter if the Tigers were like 162-0. That's just not going to happen. So I would say, and I think this is very, very important, though, in all honesty, in all seriousness, I would want a Cy Young winner. Pitching is at a premium. If you can have a guy like that, he would be obviously the ace of your staff. He would anchor a very young pitching staff, and people would see, a player who is at that point, if you're in conversation for the Cy Young, you're kind of the talk of baseball, or you're in that conversation as being perhaps the best pitcher, at least for that season. And so I would say that. And, of course, what I would like to see, I guess it's my birthday wish, is that if the Tigers do have a Cy Young Award winner next year, I think we all know who I hope that player will be. Of course, Kathy Casey Arthur Mize. You know what? I'm sounding like I'm slurring my words. I mean, maybe I did drink and I didn't know it. Maybe I'm like one of those sleepwalkers. You get up at night, you go eat a sandwich, and you have a couple of drinks, and you go back to bed, and you never remember it. I mean, who knows? Maybe I in the bourbon. I have no idea. But I would say Casey Arthur Mize, if he could win the Cy Young next year, that's a lot of pressure on you, Casey. But if anybody can do it, it's Arthur.
Well, I think
I'd say Cy Young.
I think we would all like to see Casey Mize win the Cy Young. But Dan, what do you think? Would you rather have a Rookie of the Year, Cy Young winner, or Manager of the Year?
I'm going to always hedge it by saying it really does depend on the year. Because, for instance, this year, if you're going to let me pick one of those 3 Rookie of the Year finalists, and I've got my shot at picking up a Luis Robert, even though I know he struggled down the stretch. This kid's 22, Gold Glove defender, and he's got all the tools, can hit for average, hit for power, run like the wind. I would take a Luis Robert over almost any Cy Young Award winner in terms of a person that you can build a team around. That's a special player right there. But in another year, if you've got, another year and that crop is not as strong, and you've got a Shane Bieber out there who you could certainly make your number 1 guy in a rotation for years to come, I'd take that Cy Young guy. But if you're asking about this year, I don't think you can go, year to year is going to be different. But this year, I would take the American League Cy Young candidate, Luis Robert, because that's a guy you can build around. And the White Sox have 3 of those guys now, Moncada, Jimenez, and Robert, and it's pretty special. I've never seen anything quite like it. 3 years in a row, adding guys of that caliber.
Well, with that being said, neither of you picked Manager of the Year. Well, Art just said that he doesn't think AJ Hinch would win it next year, which is probably a fair assumption. But how important is that?
Oh, it's important. I think there are difference-making managers. There absolutely are. I think Terry Francona is a difference-making manager. And we said that when he took over the Cleveland Indians. Some guys just have a knack for building winning teams with either how they coach or what they emphasize, how they know how to put together, build, and manage bullpens, whatever it might be. And he does all of the above. So, yeah, there are those guys. I mean, Joe Madden, to me, is one of those guys. Obviously didn't work out well for the Angels this past year. But when he went from Tampa to the Cubs, I mean, there was a reason they got rid of Rick Renteria. It wasn't anything that Rick Renteria did. It's just that they had a chance to get Joe Madden, who had shown a real knack for building winners with small payrolls, and then obviously delivered the World Series with a bigger payroll. So I think you're going to get some pretty special guys, but the number of guys who are difference-making managers, and I would put A.J. Hinch in that category, it's not a big list. I mean, it doesn't mean there aren't good managers out there. There are just some guys who are able to build winners year in and year out on small payrolls. I think Bob Melvin as well, and those guys are special to me.
All right,
let's put this into perspective for Tiger fans, and Double D will know this. I was at Les Moss's first game and last game as Tiger manager. He lasted 41 games. His last game was on a Monday night. And the reason I went, because Tom Haller was a catcher for the Tigers, and Bill Haller was his brother who called balls and strikes. He was the home plate umpire, and Tom Haller caught that night. I thought, hey, this is kind of cool. I'm going to go down to Tiger Stadium, and maybe these 2 brothers will get into it and really kind of duke it out. Well, it turned out being Les Moss's last game as Tiger manager. I think it was like 41 games, right, Double D? And you know why?
Yeah.
It wasn't anything Les Moss did. He was a long-time Tiger manager in the minors, much like Jim Leland, to a certain degree, got his shot. It was because a guy named George Anderson, better known as Sparky, became available, and the Tigers jumped on it and hired him. And, and again, this is kind of like A.J. Hinch all over. The Tigers might have fallen into this because of, things that we've already talked about with A.J., which is, well documented. So I think a manager is very, very important, especially now that baseball is more of a international game, and I saw this in hockey too. When you started to get that European flavor, and now you're getting the Latin American flavor and all that, you have to be able to communicate with people on a human level. And A.J. Hinch obviously is able to do that. I think that is something that a manager has to do. Gardy was great at it.
Yeah.
and I think that is a part of managing and coaching at any level in hockey and now in baseball, and maybe basketball, because it's more of an international flavor game. The NFL still pretty much American, but I would say that that's really, really important. And if somebody like that becomes available, that's why AJ Hinch, I think, is here in Detroit. But in a strange sense, how important is a manager? Well, the Tigers felt back then with Les Moss at the helm, a guy who earned it and deserved to be a manager at the major league level. But when Sparky Anderson became available,
right,
their team was ready and they had to do it. That's how important a manager is.
Well, Daniela, you know what I love?
Go ahead, Dan.
I love doing the oral histories. You know how you see sometimes it'll be a book where you talk to all the people who are involved in something, and then you got the quotes from the people. We've just got a great idea here for an oral history. The only guy who was there other than the players for Les Moss's first and last games. Can you imagine the stories we'll get out of Art Regner and anybody else who might have been involved about the Les Moss era? We've got a guy, the only guy I know, bookended. Game 1, game 41.
It was probably the most memorable 41 games I've ever seen consecutive in Tigers history. I was enthralled by all 41. Les was great. His wife wasn't too happy. If I remember correctly, she kind of blasted the Tigers a little bit after they let Les go. But a really good guy. I was there because the Tigers opened up at home that year. And he was the manager, obviously. And back then I had that streak. You know how it was when you were younger. I got to go to opening day. I don't care if it's, 18 inches of snow on the ground.
That's right.
I'm there, So I was there for that game. And then just because the Haller brothers, and I don't know why I thought this, I thought one's umping the home plate and one's catching. Boy, those guys are really going to, a lot of sibling rivalry there. You suck. That's why you're a manager, or umpire. And like, oh yeah, man, you can't. What are you hitting? Like 130? Yeah, sure. You're a major leaguer. I thought there'd be like that kind of chatter going, and it never materialized. But Les, we hardly knew you, but that's what I remember. I think it was like 40 or 41 games.
I was just going to say, Art, you have already written a book.
There you go. I have written a few books.
For joining us as always. And I have to tell you, next week is your birthday, and we're hoping to have you join us the day before. No early celebrations, and you still have to do your homework.
Still have to prep. Come on, Art got a week off.
Hey, wait. I do want to say one thing, and I am a bit disappointed, Double D. Is because I thought for sure, the forgotten holiday in America right now is Thanksgiving. We go right from Halloween to Christmas, and no one, I thought for sure you'd have a turkey on the couch, or, you would have like, a horn of plenty or whatever that thing is, that you would have all kinds of Thanksgiving stuff up. Wow, what a house. Oh my gosh, look at this. There we go. There we go. I'm not sure what that said.
It was a little note from school, probably 3rd or 4th grade, where Justin had to write what he was thankful for, and he was thankful for his cousins, Kozens.
Oh, that's it. The American education system really works.
You're a prodigy of it, Art, so it must.
Oh, you bet I am. Livonia Public Schools, baby. Livonia Public Schools.
All right, Dan, thank you so much for joining us next week. A big thank you to Little Caesars for delivering the mailbag. Little Caesars proudly introduces their hot and ready pepperoni cheeser. You get a large pizza topped with classic pepperoni, fresh mozzarella, and toasted Parmesan and Asiago cheese crust for just $7. Try our no-contact pizza portal or delivery from Little Caesars. You guys, we still have a lot coming up on today's show. We'll be joined by Red Wings defenseman Troy Stetcher, MLB.com's Jason Beck to continue the free agency talk. And of course, for the headliner, 1997 Stanley Cup champion and Conn Smythe winner Mike Vernon will join Art for the headliner. But right now, we're going to toss it over to Carly Johnston, who is with a very special guest.
That's right. It's time for Catching Up with Carly, presented by Meyer. And today I'm pleased to be joined by former Tigers pitcher Nate Robertson. How's it going, Nate?
It's good, Carly. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks for being on. What have you been up to lately?
Lots of golf. I've actually got my golf attire on now. I'll be golfing after our interview. So, yeah, doing a lot of that.
Well, let's get through this and we'll get you out on the links. All right. So, a couple questions. What have you been doing? But what did you do before the pandemic? I understand you are still in baseball.
Yeah, I actually, I was a team owner with an independent club here in Wichita. But we actually were bought out by the city. AAA baseball came to Wichita, the Marlins AAA franchise. So we have this brand new $75 million stadium downtown Wichita, which hasn't had a game played in it, which it's kind of been a terrible deal. The majority owner actually passed away. He did get the COVID. And he has some other health complications, but it's kind of been sad, obviously, with baseball being something that's a great social gathering for many. So this summertime has been really strange for a lot of us.
Absolutely. And after we saw that MLB play this weird condensed season, we saw big news coming out of the Tigers organization just last week with the Tigers naming AJ Hinch as their manager, someone you played with and pitched to during your time in Detroit and Toledo with the Mud Hens. How cool is it to now see him in this position?
Well, I mean, AJ obviously he's been successful at every level, and he's an intellect. He was a great teammate to me, and he helped me along. He's, like I said, he's very smart. And as a young pitcher at the time, he helped me really understand what I was trying to do out there on the mound. But I think he does a great job in understanding his players. And I actually heard part of his interview when they got hired. He talked about getting the most out of each individual, and that's his job. And I played for a great manager, Jim Leland, who did the very same thing.
Absolutely. And how beneficial is it when a manager has actually played the game of baseball and specifically for that organization previously?
Oh, it's great. And I mean, the relationships run deep, and he's obviously been part of the organization before. His relationship with Avila has been outstanding. And, going through an interview process and for Al and David Chad to sit down and talk to him and go through that hiring process, I have my trust in Al and David, and so I know that they made the right choice.
Absolutely. Can't wait to see what he does with the team. Do you have any fun stories and moments you shared with him during your time together?
Oh, so AJ probably wouldn't remember this, but we had a game, and it's actually when we were both Mud Hens before we both got called up in 2003, and we were cruising along. I mean, he was calling a great game, and I was trusting the pitches that he was throwing down. But I was working on a BP fastball, and so every now and then I'd sneak it in there when he'd call fastball, and he didn't really appreciate that much. So I remember we came into the dugout in the seventh inning. I think we were up 2-1, and I'd given up one run through 7, and he goes over and he's frustrated, and he says, "Nate, we're on the opposite ends of the world right now." And so, so at the time, I'd given up one run in 7 innings, and I was looking at him, and I looked up at the scoreboard, and I looked back at him, and I was like, okay, I don't get that. But anyway, we had some good times together in that short period of time.
As long as it worked out in the end.
Yeah, exactly.
And continuing your career with the Tigers, in 2006, you helped lead the Tigers into their ALCS sweep over the Oakland Athletics. What was that experience like, having that with your team?
Well, it was, especially for me and a guy like Brandon Inge and Craig Monroe or Ramon Santiago. There was about 7 or 8 of us that had been holdovers from that 2003 team that lost 119 games. So to go through that process, and that's the kind of the process that I'm seeing with the Tigers right now as well, going to spring training the last couple of years, seeing the young talent, now seeing these pitchers come in that have these bionic arms, and now you're almost positioning yourself to get those bigger free agents. You let the front office decide when that's the time to strike. But that's what happened with us. Then you bring in a Pudge and a Kenny Rogers, a Todd Jones with all of the show. You had Verlander coming up, and you had Zamaya, and we had this perfect formula. And we should have won the World Series. I mean, the best team did not win, but we had a great run. It was a lot of fun, great memories, and this is the best year of my life in baseball for sure.
I love that. And that year when you were called up, was this a team that you had faith in from the get-go? Did you think, yeah, we're going to go to the World Series this year? Or was it just like, oh my gosh, we made it this far?
Yeah, we knew we had talent. I think, and it was Jim Leland's first year. He had come in and immediately met every player where he was at. And what I mean by that is that he got to know each and every one of us and what made us tick. And so he was able to maximize each and every one of our abilities with where we were at. And then that just it created a great culture. The clubhouse was amazing. We started winning, up front, and we had, we were like kind of looking around at each other saying, we're a pretty good team. And so we made that, obviously we won a lot of games, came up short at the end. But there was a time that, after the All-Star break especially, we knew that we were going to make a really deep run.
Love it. It was a great year in Tigers history. That same year in 2006, you started the gum time tradition where you filled your mouth with Big League Chew to rally on your teammates. What was the thought process behind that? What got you there?
I was actually standing. They used to do quite a few of those in-game mics. They put on a player most of the time as a pitcher because a starting pitcher, because we didn't, we'd be in the dugout and we didn't have anything else to do because it wasn't the day we were pitching. And so I was standing there with Kenny Rogers. They actually asked him to do it, and then he passed it along to the younger guy. He was too cool of a vet to do that. So we're going through the game, and I told him, I said, look, guys, I'm kind of a boring guy, but I'll throw you a bone. And we were down by 5. It's 5-0 to the Yankees. And I did something that we did in Little League. We used to throw in a big wad of seeds or gum for a rally chew. And so they put the camera on me, and they had the mic obviously live. And I was throwing the gum, I was stuffing my mouth with the gum. And right when I did it, like at that instant, Pudge hits a home run. So it was instant TV magic. And then I did it like 2 or 3 more times in that game, and we actually came back. We lost the game in extra innings, but we came back and tied it up. But I'd done it a few times, and the fans they jumped all over it. And it was a magical season, so they followed every little thing, and you don't realize how much fans pay attention to until you experience something like that. Because the next day I pitched against the Yankees, and there was these kids had these signs drawn up of me with a big wad of bubble gum in my mouth, and then it just became kind of a cult following that year.
Somewhat of like a superstition that fans latch onto.
Yeah.
Really.
That's right.
And having watched the Tigers, I'll talk about the current Tigers team. Sorry, was there something you wanted to say?
Well, I was just going to say about that year, I think we led the major leagues in comeback victories, and so that was kind of our rally cry. So anyway, it was a fan thing, and people always ask me about that, but I was like, the fans embraced it. It was their thing to do, and we had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I mean, when it works, it works. If it's putting gum in your mouth, it's putting gum in your mouth. You do what you got to do for the team.
That's right. That's right.
And talking about the current Tigers team, having watched them during this odd condensed season, what are some takeaways from the team that you saw? I know you mentioned that you were also down in Lakeland for training camp.
Yeah. Yes. And Carly, to be honest with you, it's crazy for me to watch these athletes today being retired officially in 2014. I've been away from the game as an athlete pitcher, but I see these guys and their athleticism and their abilities, and I sit there and go, how did I compete at that level? Because it doesn't really make sense. Those guys. So the talent is obviously across the board. The talent's there. And I think I revert back to what AJ said about getting the most out of your players, each individual, because once you do that, you're going to bring together a team. And so, like I said, with the talent being there, And I was around the pitchers a lot, obviously, but I mean the pitching is ridiculous. They have so many arms, and just being able to get the most out of those players, you'll have a team. You'll have a really good team, and you'll have a good team for a while.
Yeah. Hopefully that happens next season. We're hoping that AJ Hinch can bring us to the World Series. But Nate, it has been an absolute pleasure meeting you virtually and getting to talk to you.
Well, Carly, I'll see you in Detroit sometime. How about that?
Yes, absolutely. And thanks again for joining me on Catching Up with Carly, presented by Meyer. Daniela, back to you.
Thank you, Carly. Really cool to hear from Nate. That was a great interview. You're going to stick with us because it's time for Bet You Didn't Know, presented by PointsBet Sportsbook, an official gaming partner of the Detroit Tigers. But today, we are going to talk some Red Wings history here in honor of Fox Sports Detroit running some classic games. We're going to talk about the 97 Stanley Cup final. And I'm going to set this up for you guys as if we are headed into game one. Now, you have to remember about the Red Wings that in 95-96, they won 62 games and the President's Trophy, but were knocked out of the playoffs by Colorado in the Western Conference Final. Now, head to 96-97, the Wings won much less than that. They won only 38 games. No one expected them to reach the Stanley Cup final, but they did, and they were clear underdogs in the matchup with Philly. Philly had 103 points on the season and handily won each of their series 4-1 in previous playoff matchups. Detroit finally got past the Avs in 6 games for the conference final, but people wondered if they could actually match the physical play of the Flyers, especially after such a physical series with Colorado. Now, Art, we know that Scotty Bowman made a very famous move to match that physicality. What was that?
Well, Daniela, let's just preface this by saying that we all know there's an East Coast bias and a bit of a West Coast bias, and only on election night do they even pay attention to the Midwest. So the Red Wings were prohibitive underdogs against the Philadelphia Flyers. They had a player who was considered to be the second coming, the Sidney Crosby, the next Wayne Gretzky, and Eric Lindros. He had been on a line called the Crazy Eights line with Mark Recchi, who wore number 8, Lindros wore 88, and Brett Fedek, former Red Wing, wore number 18. Red Wing draft pick, by the way. Brett's a real good guy. I still think he lives in the area. So he was really a hot commodity. But when Philly paired him up, when he centered a line of John LeClaire, big strapping American lad, and Michael Renberg, very, very highly skilled Swedish player, the Legion of Doom was born. Why were they called the Legion of Doom? Because all of them were at least 6'2" or more, were tall, that big, and they weighed at least 230 pounds. They were an offensive juggernaut, but they were also a physically dominating presence on the ice. Their forecheck was absolutely amazing. In the 96-97 season, and I wanted to write this down, LeClaire had 97 points and 50 goals. Lindros, 79 points and 32 goals. Renberg, 59 points, 22 goals. They had 104 goals as a line and 223 points total. So they were the prohibitive favorites, especially because the Red Wings, even though they were a tough hockey team and they had a team toughness that was very underrated, everybody thought that Philly was just going to just manhandle them, just really manhandle the Detroit Red Wings because of the Legion of Doom, going back to the Broad Street Bully days with Bobby Clark and Dave Schultz and all that. Dave the Ham, everyone was just thinking, oh, yeah, Philly hockey, man, it's tough, and you're just going to kill them, and, yeah, there's Detroit, this, European flavored team, and they're not going to, oh, boy, Legion of Doom has them. Well. Well, you have the greatest coach in professional sport history. Weird things happen. What did Scotty Bowman do? First and foremost, in game 1, he started the grind line of Joe Kocur, Kirk Maltby, and Chris Draper against, of course, the Legion of Doom. Now, everybody, some people, okay, yeah, that's cool. But everybody was waiting for Vladimir Konstantinov to go up against Eric Lindros. They had a history. You check it out on YouTube. There's a couple of great checks that they both delivered against one another where I think there was one, they hit each other so hard that they were both out on their skates. You know, they're both kind of, because they got to be tough skating to the bench, like, woo, you know. So everybody was really, really looking forward to that. You know, this physical brand of hockey, Legion of Doom, going to just take those, you know, those crafty Detroit Red Wings, highly skilled team, and just blow them out. Well, the master, Scotty Bowman, he put Nick Lindstrom and Larry Murphy against the Legion of Doom. Two Hall of Fame defensemen, two defensemen that had puck possession abilities. They nullified the Legion of Doom's forecheck because they could both move the puck and get it out of their end. Detroit did not play a dump and chase game. And Philly was taken out of anything that they wanted to do against the Red Wings because of that move, because of Nick and Larry. How effective were they? Leclerc and Lindros combined for 1 goal each. They only scored 1 goal in the final. Granted, the Red Wings swept them 4-0. And Lindros's goal didn't come until the final minute of clinching game 4. The Red Wings were up 2-0 on Darren's, you know, the blind squirrel gets a nut goal, but they nullified them completely. It was over. They swept them mainly because of that move of putting Nick and Larry against the Legion of Doom. Completely took them out of their physicality, completely was in their heads. They spent the time chasing the Red Wings around. You know, you can't hit what you can't touch, and they never possessed the puck. Brilliant move by Scotty. Of course, when you have two Hall of Fame defensemen like Murph and Nick, it makes it easy. So, boom. There's your history lesson for the day.
I love it. So we had things going on the blue line during that series, but Carly, we know you can't win a championship without goaltending, and that is something the Red Wings had during that entire season too.
One of the most important, and I know Art says it is the most important position and player out on the ice throughout the regular season that year. Osgood was the starting goalie, but Mike Vernon did start 33 games. So that's a little under, half of the season. But Vernon was hot near the end of the season, and Bowman decided to ride the hot hand and named Vernon the starting goalie headed into the playoffs. A little bit of a competition there between the goalies. During the playoffs, Vernon started all 20 games and watched his save percentage jump from .899 to .927 en route to a Stanley Cup and the Conn Smythe Trophy. But speaking of Mike Vernon, I know we're seeing a little bit of his highlights right now, but we're going to be seeing him later on in the show. Mike Vernon will be on for the headliner to talk about the series with Art, so stay tuned for that. Until then, Daniela?
Well, thank you, Carly. And I think we learned something very important. Maybe we didn't learn. We already knew this, but that's 2 great coaching moves by Scotty Bowman there to help the Red Wings capture that Stanley Cup in 1997. Even though we know Osgood is a very capable and really good goaltender, he obviously wasn't hot at the time. He said, you know what, Vernon's getting the start. Right move by him. And then to put Murphy and Lindstrom against the Legion of Doom. He is brilliant, Art. And I see why you love him so much. I see why you call him the best coach in professional
Scotty is, and you know, Mike Vernon gets into that a little bit because what people really don't know, and you know, those of us, and I think Ozzy has actually said this on the Word on Woodward before when we've had him on as a guest, is that Mike Vernon was very influential and a mentor to a young Chris Osgood. They had a really good friendship. The year before, they won the Jennings Trophy for the least amount of goals given up by a goaltending tandem. So they're really tight. They're really close. And Mike talks about having to replace his good buddy for that playoff run because Ozzy saw a majority of work that season.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. It was very interesting and very exciting time for the Detroit Red Wings, bringing back the Stanley Cup to Detroit. And you guys can watch game 1 of that series on Fox Sports Detroit tonight, starting at 8 p.m. So we'll all be tuning in. You definitely should too. And of course, after that, the draft review show will be running again. If you haven't caught that yet, featuring Art Regner, Ken Kale, Ken Daniels, Trevor Thompson, and John Keating. And of course, Steve Eisenman makes an appearance too. It was a great show. They break down the draft. They go through all of the Red Wings picks. So definitely check that out too. And that is going to wrap it up for Bet You Didn't Know today. Bet You Didn't Know is presented by PointsBet Sportsbook, an official gaming partner of the Detroit Tigers. Download the app and follow PointsBet USA on social media for more information. You guys are in for a real treat today because we have a bonus version of Catching Up with Carly, so let's check it out.
That's right. It's time for Catching Up with Carly, presented by Meijer. And I'm joined today by Meijer's Regional Vice President of the East Region, Matt Craig. How's it going, Matt?
You're doing great. How are you, Carly?
Very, very good. Thanks for asking. All right. So I understand the Tigers and Meijer have teamed up to bring about a very important event right now, a flu shot clinic at Comerica Park. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, we're really excited about it. You know, we're going to be going forward with this flu shot clinic on November 9th from 10 in the morning to 4 p.m. At Comerica Park. You know, it's always important to get your flu shot. But, you know, this year with all that's been going on in this unprecedented time, making sure that we can get opportunities for the entire community to get the shot is just paramount. It will help keep our communities safe and reduce symptoms that are not COVID related to help families just be a little safer. And, you know, our goal is always to enrich the lives of the communities we serve. And we think by partnering, you know, with Meijer, the Detroit Tigers, and the state of Michigan, we can make getting your flu shot a little easier this year amongst all the other things we have to worry about.
Absolutely. And why is it important for Meijer to get the support of the Detroit Tigers and encourage people to get a flu shot?
Well, you know, the Detroit Tigers have always been a great partner of ours. We are obviously a Michigan company, and we love a passion to compete. We love working together to do things to make this world a little bit better. And, you know, one of the first partners we thought of as we were thinking about how to get flu shots to the masses and the communities we serve was the Tigers. And we're really excited about it.
Love it. And what can people expect at this clinic? I understand it's free to anyone who shows up, but what else should people know?
Yeah, I think just to reiterate that, the best part of this is that this Meijer free flu clinic is just that. It is free to everyone, regardless of insurance coverage, including individuals who are uninsured or have limited insurance. So I think that's the big point to reiterate what you just said. And then the next thing is we're going to make sure that all CDC guidelines will be followed. Social distancing will be in effect. Hand sanitizer is going to be available. You know, those that are giving the inoculations will have the proper PPE to do so, you know, very safe. And I also hear from your side, my good friend Paz will be there. My daughters love Paz. So I hear he's going to be there masked up and handing out free giveaways as well. So I think those are the big things that people can expect.
Flu shot doesn't hurt when Paz is around, right?
That's right.
Love it. Where can anyone with questions go for more information?
You know, Carly, there are going to be two spots. One, Detroit Tigers landing page. So tigers.com, there'll be a link there for the Meijer free flu clinic. And then also at Meijer.com in the weekly ad, there will be a link to go to the Meijer free flu clinic as well.
Awesome. All right. So the Meijer page and the DetroitTigers.com page. All right, Matt, thank you so much for joining me. Hoping for a good turnout. I already got my flu shot, but I hope everyone goes to Comerica Park to get theirs as well. And I hope you guys all, including you, Matt, stay happy and healthy.
You as well. Thank you so much for the opportunity to partner on this.
Yes, absolutely. And thanks again for joining me on Catching Up with Carly, presented by Meijer. Daniela, back to you.
Thank you, Carly and Matt. You guys, very important to get your flu shot, and you can do that at Comerica Park on Monday and Tuesday next week. Again, for more information, visit tigers.com. You can find all of the information right there. We've still got some great things coming up in today's Word on Woodward. We're going to be joined by Mike Vernon for the headliner later in the show, and Jason Beck is going to join us live to talk more about Tigers free agency. But right now, we're going to get into downtown Hockeytown, where yesterday Art and I were joined by one of your newest Red Wings. It's time for Downtown Hockeytown, presented by Labatt Blue Light, and today's guest is one of your newest Red Wings defensemen, Troy Stetcher. Troy, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
We're excited to have you, and we're excited to have you here in Detroit. And I'm going to get right to it with this first question. Detroit wasn't the most ideal place to be at. Let's be honest. They won only 17 games last season. But when you talked to Steve Yzerman and you were making your decision, what made you want to come to Detroit?
I think there's a mutual interest between both groups, obviously with their organization and myself as a player. I just like kind of the age group of their core, with Larkin and Mantha and Bertuzzi. They're all kind of in the same age as I am. I'm not overly old. I'm not young, but I have 4 years of experience in the league now. So hopefully I can mesh well with the group.
Troy, what was the negotiation like with Steve? I mean, did you talk to him? Was it your agent? Did you get to know Steve a little bit? And what is it like when, you're talking to Steve Yzerman about maybe coming and playing on his team?
For the most part, it was for me, it was my first time through the whole free agency process. So my agent dealt with it for the most part. I did speak with Steve Yzerman after I'd signed the contract, and he sounded extremely excited to have me on board, and it was vice versa. So it's crazy how the whole process works through free agency. Like, there's so many dominoes that fall and things move so quick, but they had some serious interest in me as a player, and they offered me a multi-year contract.
Do you have a timeline of when you would like to get here to Detroit? I don't know what travel restrictions are like. I assume you're in British Columbia right now. So do you look forward to getting Detroit? Can you get like a special exempt status? Because I believe the border is still closed. How is that playing out for you?
Right now, I'm just staying patient. I'm here in Vancouver still, where I spend my off seasons, where I'm from. I have a good group of guys that I'm working out with in skating, so I'm in no rush to get there. I'm just waiting for a start date. Obviously, I think with a lot of guys, once that gets announced, I'll come down early, obviously, to get familiar, get a place organized, and find my way around the town. So just kind of a waiting game at this point.
One thing you are at least a little bit familiar with is Alex Biega, another Red Wings defenseman. You guys played together in Vancouver. Do you know him pretty well, and have you talked to him, and what have you guys talked about?
Yeah, I know Bulldog really well. We sat beside each other in the locker room in Vancouver for 2 years. So I'm excited to be back with him. I know his wife, Diane, and their 3 boys. So we follow them on Instagram, my girlfriend and I, and we keep in touch with them. So they're a great family. And same with Sam Gagner. I know their family quite well, and I'm excited to see them again and spend some quality time.
Troy, you brought up Biega, whose nickname, everybody calls him Bulldog. I saw a video that was circulating with you. Do you give nicknames to all your teammates? Like Brock Besser was Mr. Sensitive. Quinn Hughes, I think, for who, University of Michigan product, and you playing for North Dakota, you're pretty familiar with college hockey. Do you have nicknames for maybe some of your new Red Wing teammates? Like, what would you call Dylan Larkin or Anthony Mantha or Tyler Bertuzzi? Have you thought about that yet?
No, I haven't. I think Mantha, if I remember correctly, from World was Mo. Obviously, Bertuzzi's Bert. I don't know. Us hockey guys aren't the brightest guys, so we don't get too creative. It's pretty simple.
I have to correct you. I know he's going to say the same thing because his nickname for Anthony Mantha, go ahead, Art, you tell him.
We always called him Big Tony, BT, but then when he scores a goal, which he does quite often, he gives this woo sound. So we call him the BT Express, and he absolutely loves it. I'm not, so when you first meet Anthony Mantha, Troy, you walk into that Red Wing room, there you all are. You see those beautiful, iconic winged wheel jerseys, the red and white. Just go up to him and say, "Hey, Express, how you doing?"
All right.
You will definitely get a you'll get a response.
Yeah, a lot of guys
trust
call
me.
me Tony too. A lot of guys
Do
call
they?
me Tony, so I'll let him keep that. The BT Express.
It's seriously
Right.
though. You're a rough and tumble type of player. You may not be the biggest guy around, but in a strange sense, and I'm not comparing you, but you seem to have a little bit of an attitude out there on the ice. You play bigger than maybe your 5'10" or 11 frame is. How did you develop that type of style? I mean, do you just like it rough and tumble?
No, I think as a undersized guy, especially, growing up through the ranks of junior and college, I think everybody kind of labeled me just strictly as an offensive guy. And just being true to myself, I wouldn't say I was always a superstar or someone that could dominate based on my skill. So I've always kind of had to rely on my work ethic and that aspect of my game just to kind of make up for everything else. And it's something I pride myself on and I carry with me. And I'll bring that same intensity to Detroit that I had here in Vancouver.
To elaborate on that a little bit, Jim Benning actually had some really great things to say about you, about that intensity and the compete level that you bring every single shift. How do you plan on continuing that here in Detroit, where you may not be as comfortable as you were in Vancouver?
I don't know. I'm just going to be true to myself. I think that I know who I am as a player, and I know who I am best as opposed to anybody else. And I appreciate like any positive remarks anybody has to say about me. But obviously, it's a new challenge for me leaving home. But at the same time, it's not something I'm new with. Like I left home to play in North Dakota for 3 years, and I've been to Penticton, and I think I've always carried that intensity and those attributes with me anywhere I've played. So I'll always try to play my best and bring the intensity that I bring to for any crest.
There is so much history behind the Red Wings and all of the success that they've had as an organization. Was that part of the factors that went into your decision making?
Yeah, absolutely. Just the history that they have, and I don't want to get too personal, but I lost my dad this year, and he was a diehard Red Wings fan, even though we're from here in Vancouver. And I think a lot of people kind of around his generation were, just with the success and the history that the organization's had and the amount of playoffs they've made and the Stanley Cups that they won. So for me, I think it was kind of a little message from my dad kind of telling me that this is the place to be. So I couldn't be more excited.
Hey, if it's divine intervention, that's great. And, obviously your condolences. I lost my father over 20 years ago. I mean, it's not an easy thing, certainly. With that said, focusing on the future, have you had any kind of talks with the Red Wings, or did you talk to Jeff Blashill about how you see your role here once you get to Detroit?
Yeah, I've spoken with a few of the coaching staff members, obviously the management, and they just said, as an organization standpoint, that they're going to do anything they can to improve, and that kind of nobody's position is guaranteed or locked to where they played. So the onus is on me to come to camp prepared to earn the ice time that I want and that I feel I deserve. And if I don't get that, then I have nobody else to blame but myself. So I've been looking for an opportunity to play, a different role, kind of a role that I played in college, where I might be more of a go-to guy or somebody that the coaching staff can trust more. And I hope to earn that here.
Troy, who are some of the players that you looked up to as a little kid? Who did you model your game after when you were becoming the player that you are now?
I think as far as like modeling my style of play, I would say kind of a mixture of Duncan Keith and Jared Spurgeon. Those are two guys that I really kind of watched their film a lot more than anybody else going through college. But I was always a fan of kind of Ray Bourque and Nick Lidstrom growing up. Those were kind of they were the two best defensemen in the leagues at their time, and they might be the two greatest defensemen in the history of the game. So those are kind of four guys that I liked watching and that I pick different styles from.
Troy, I know you're a very versatile player. We've talked about your defensive prowess, but you were a line mate of the Sedin twins, if I remember that correctly. Do you think you're going to push for time at forward here? Perhaps be on a line with Larkin and Mantha like you were with the Sedin twins? I mean, that must have been a real memorable experience for you.
Yeah, I did it once in practice, but it was April Fool's, so I fell for it. I'll stick to playing defense. I was a rookie there, so I was too scared to speak up. I just kind of did what I was told.
It is a classic. It's a classic video though, because you were going along with it. You had no idea it was April 1st until they told you.
Hey, I was excited.
Well, Troy, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We are really excited to have you here in Detroit and looking forward to meeting you in person.
Yes, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me, and I can't wait to get down there.
A big thank you to Labatt Blue Light as well for presenting Downtown Hockeytown. Labatt Blue Light, refreshing Canadian Pilsner. Visit your local retailer when safe to pick up some Labatt Blue Light. Another big thank you to Troy for joining us for Downtown Hockeytown. Now we're going to switch gears and get back into some Tigers baseball, get into Brush Street Beat, presented by our friends at McLaren Healthcare. And today's guest is MLB.com's Jason Beck. Jason, as always, it's great to see you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, and happy birthday, Art.
Jason, thank you, my friend. I really appreciate that. Unlike Double D, I think it was very sincere. So, it really means, it touches my heart. It means a lot to me.
Well, I had to come on to celebrate this. I mean, this is a pretty important day, I think.
It is. It's Guy Fawkes Day in England, so it's a really big day. All he wanted to do was blow up Parliament. I think that's kind of cool. On my birthday, some guy decided in England to blow up Parliament and was caught. So it did not turn out well for Guy Fawkes. It did not.
No, that did not have a positive outcome for him.
It wasn't a happy ending for Guy, that's for sure.
Let's get into some Tigers baseball, Jason. Yesterday, you wrote an article that talked about the needs of the Tigers headed into next season. And your biggest needs were impact hitters, a catcher, and pitching depth. I want to start with the pitching depth because Dan Dickerson brought up a very interesting point earlier in the mailbag. He mentioned Drew Smyly possibly coming back to the Tigers. What do you think about that?
I've thought about that a couple times as he's been on the market over the years. He's kind of had an up and down history recently with injuries and everything. Last time he was out and available, the Tigers didn't really do a whole lot there, which kind of caught me by surprise. I think it was in the middle of the season, so that kind of might have limited what they were able to do, certainly roster-wise. But there's a comfort level there, and I think there's a benefit, and I think it's, there's a bounce back possibility, and he's shown the ability to get outs with the way he's pitching right now, and I think there's, he's still at a pretty good age to where he shouldn't be on the downslope of his career, and he's shown also that he can be a versatile arm, so that if the Tigers go in a younger direction with the bulk of their rotation, he's a guy that you can fit into the bullpen and rely on as a bulk reliever, a bulk starter, whatever you want to call it, and kind of fit into what you might want to call the modern pitching staff right now, where you have guys in a lot of different roles and not necessarily a bunch of starters working deep into games, at least early on into the season.
Jason, this is more maybe of a gut feel. Do you have a feel how the Tigers are going to approach their pitching staff next year? Do you think that they're going to allow like a Manning and a Faedo? Obviously, Skubal and Miser are kind of already here. That they're going to allow it to be as young as it could be, or do you think they really do want to go out, have some sort of veteran presence, even though Alexander and obviously Matt Boyd are very good influences?
Well, the one consistent thing from Al Avila ever since he took over as GM, and even before when he was working under Dave Dombrowski, is that the idea that you need pitching depth to get through a season nowadays, just between injuries, struggles, you can't count on the same set of 5 starters or even like 6 or 7. You need almost to have enough pitching for 2 rotations just to make sure you're covered in terms of injuries, in terms of guys needing a break, what have you. So I expect, whatever they want to do with Manning and Faedo, and I do expect they're going to be patient with those guys, especially coming off of forearm tightness. I expect them to go out and pursue some depth, and to be now, they're in a good position in that they have some depth already built in house. Daniel Norris has shown himself to be extremely versatile in that pitch, kind of like what Drew Smyly was back in the day before he got traded. Michael Fulmer can fill a number of different roles. Anthony Castro has done different things on his way up the minor leagues. So now I would expect that they would want to add at least 1 or 2 veterans to kind of fill similar roles in that mix. And that's going to be interesting on this market because I do expect there to be a ton of pitchers, especially relievers, looking for jobs out there. And so, they should have a pretty good selection, depending on what end of the market they want to go to. And in so doing, I expect there will be some starters who are capable of being stretched out or, capable of working shorter roles and going both ways and being swingmen.
Not only with pitchers, Jason, but really with every position. We know that AJ Hinch is good with young developing players. Does that change the approach at all heading into next season?
It's hard to tell right away. I do think it's interesting. I expect them to keep Ramon Santiago on. They liked what he was able to do with the young infielders, especially Willie Castro this past season, and even before that, working with him in spring training. They like what he was able to do with the shifts and being able to put guys in the right places. So, I think that provides some stability in an area where there's going to be a big youth infusion. I know it's going to be up and down a roster where they're going to be working in prospects, but I think it's important, most of all, in the infield, where you have Adames. You have Candelario still learning his way at third and first base. You have Spencer Torkelson on the way, hopefully at some point here within the next year to year and a half. You still have some other guys being worked in there. You have Zach Short, who has some utility capability, or who could be a middle infielder with some pop, depending on he develops. So I think in that sense, it'll be interesting to see how Santiago and AJ Hinch work together to kind of help these infielders along.
Jason, as Daniela said, you said impact hitters, catcher, and pitching depth. Let's go to the catching position because it doesn't look like Austin Romine's going to come back. His strikeout and walk ratio was really kind of bad, and they probably need more from an offensive standpoint, although he really did well with handled the pitching staff. How much of a possibility is James McCann? Is he on the Tigers' radar? Are they willing to maybe spend money for him? Whatever I heard, 2 years, maybe up to $14 million, or which is a lot of money certainly. But he's a catcher. Catcher's at a premium in Major League Baseball.
That's an interesting question. I haven't gotten a good read on it yet. It's kind of quiet right now. I think a lot of it depends on how the top of the catching market moves. JT Realmuto obviously could be the top free agent available overall, and depending on where he ends up, that could affect what the market looks like for McCann. If he ends up not re-signing in Philadelphia, that's one position the Phillies are going to have to fill. And if Yadi Molina goes to a certain place, if he stays with the Cardinals or goes elsewhere, that could also affect things. Molina is up there in age, but he's shown incredible durability. And I think as we saw in September or October, he's still got a lot to be an impact player. So I'm still waiting to see where McCann fits in beyond those guys. Yeah, I think if there's a lot of interest and there's a chance for him to play on a contending team, it's going to be tough, despite the familiarity. But if the Tigers are willing to spend a little bit, they might be able to win back. It's I know it was a decision that didn't go over well when they non-tendered him, but what's past is past.
Jason, when it comes to catching, I have also seen Alex Avila's name thrown around a couple of times. What do you think about that, and is there any chance there?
Well, they went after him the last time. And, I know Al Avila joked about it when Alex decided to go to a contender and signed with the Twins, and that led them to Romine a year ago. So it's in that sense, they were kind of joking about the family ties and everything. But he's a guy that makes sense. I don't know if you want to count on him as an everyday ball catcher right now. I think if you sign him with the idea that you're going to mix him in with one of your younger guys, whether it's Jake Rogers or Grayson Griner or whatever. But I think he's definitely an option. I think a lot of people have thought that him coming back to Detroit would probably be a pretty big point in at some point of his career to bring it all full circle. I know he's done it already, a few years ago, but to bring it back right now, I think would be a good, it'd be a good landing spot for the tail end of his career, and it might help him kind of figure out what he wants to do after his playing days are done.
Can you imagine what Christmas dinner would have been like at the Avila household last year? Oh, hi, Alex. I thought you'd be spending Christmas with your new family in Minnesota. It was probably pretty awkward. I want to get into impact hitters, and and I think you're right. I think you're spot on. But I'm looking at Jonathan Scope, who I think towards the end was trying to play through an injury, and that's why his numbers fell off. And before he was hurt, CJ Cron, and I know his rehab might be longer than anybody would like, including CJ. But I would consider bringing both of them back because they are impact hitters. They're power hitters, and CJ Cron seemed to have no problem hitting in Comerica Park, which is tough for some guys.
They are impact hitters, and they're guys that made the clubhouse better, which I think weighs a lot when you're talking about a team that's already young and probably going to get younger here next season. So, they made a positive impact. I know Scope, really impressed the Tigers with kind of a quiet leadership. If there's an opportunity to bring them back, I think the Tigers, it would behoove them to do it, especially since it would give them a chance to work Willie Castro in the short and give him a good look to see if he's a long-term fit there before we hit the big free agent shortstop market next winter, and we try to figure out if the Tigers could maybe get mixed in there if they see a need to fill that spot if they don't feel like Willie Castro is the answer. So, and Cron, I think a lot of it depends on where he is injury-wise. The one benefit the Tigers have, as they did last year, is that first base doesn't tend to be a really busy market for a lot of contending teams because those clubs tend to have their answers at first base already there. So, if he's able to play going into next season to start the year, yeah, I think it would make a lot of sense to get a reunion going there.
Jason, one last question for you. So we talk about CJ Cron and Jonathan Scope. Those are obviously our own free agents, but if they are unable to sign with the Tigers, where else could the Tigers look for that impact hitting?
Well, they still have opportunities in the corner outfield spots. I know it's, they have young guys there with Victor Reyes, Kristen Stewart, even though obviously Stewart's got to get a new number now that AJ Hinch took his. But I think the Tigers, much like they did with Cameron Maben right at the start of spring, I would expect them to try to bring in some competition. Jock Peterson's a guy who's been rumored a little bit. He would fit in terms of lineup balance. We'll see what the market is for him. I think the Tigers would like to try to get a little bit more plate discipline in there. As we've seen, they've struck out an awful lot, especially for a team that isn't necessarily heavily reliant on power. I think they'd like to change that. I think that fits in with AJ Hinch's style. I know everybody talks about how much the Astros hit for power, but I think one of the things that mark their run here is that they've been an incredibly disciplined team when they've had to be. They don't strike out as much as you think. They're a team that's certainly capable of putting the ball in play as well as drawing walks. They even showed that this year under Dusty, but that really came into being under AJ Hinch. So I would expect this team to try to move into that direction to reflect his style a little bit more.
Could be a very interesting offseason for the Tigers. Jason, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thanks. And again, happy birthday, Art.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it. I really, really do. It's very sincere. And, next week it's Double D's birthday. And I'm not going to say happy birthday to him.
Oh, wow.
But I will to you, Jason. Yeah, I know. Well, I'm just, I'm honest. I have to say that.
Well, you have to wait till February for mine. So, I thought you had or something.
If you're not in a full beard by February, I will be greatly disappointed.
Well, they are calling for a warmer than normal winter here in Michigan, so I might be able to stay somewhat clean shaven. I'm waiting to see how it goes. Obviously, this fits in well with the warm spell we've been having.
All you have to do is not shave for 2 days.
That's one thing I can proudly say I have in common with Alex Avila is we're both capable of growing out facial hair fairly quick.
Well, thank you again, Jason. Always great to talk to you. We'll be having you on very soon. And of course, a big thank you to McLaren Healthcare for presenting Breast Street Beat every week right here on The Word on Woodward. And we have come to that time. We've been talking about the headliner all show. Art Regner was joined by Mike Vernon. Let's toss to that.
Thank you, Daniela. It is time for the headliner presented by Miller Lite. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome to the headliner Mike Vernon, former Red Wings Stanley Cup champion, two-time Stanley Cup champion, and Conn Smythe winner for the Red Wings back in 1997. Mike, thanks for joining us. Really, really appreciate it.
No problem.
Let's go back to June 29th, 1994. You're traded to the Red Wings from Calgary. You basically spent your entire hockey career playing in Alberta, playing in your hometown of Calgary. I know you're in Portland a little bit and all that. Was it a bit of a culture shock? Because I remember talking to you where you were kind of ready maybe to leave the Flames organization at that point.
Oh, most definitely. I've, just growing up here in Calgary, playing all my hockey, minor hockey, junior hockey, and then the pros. I just felt personally that it's a small city, Calgary. I think back in those days it was only about 600,000 people. So a lot of people either knew me or thought they knew me and things like this, and just the pressure of the Canadian city. And I recall one time during playoffs, we had a couple days off, and I just went to the golf course just to hit balls, on the range, and people, oh, shouldn't you be practicing? Shouldn't you be doing this? Shouldn't you be it's just wherever I went, like it was just people in my ear and trying to talk, and you just wanted to, get away and relax and just, let your body recover and try to, get your mind clear and get ready for the next game. But it was just, and it was no different than Patrick Waugh in Montreal. He was going through the same thing, and then he got traded. But yeah, it was time for me to leave. I had a good run in Calgary, and we won a Stanley Cup and things like that. To land in Detroit, I enjoyed it there. I know it's a hockey town, the pressure, but I felt at peace there, and I just enjoyed my time there, and it was fun, and being paired up with Chris Osgood, who I got along with very well and still to this day do. So it was just a good scenario for myself.
When you look at it, and and obviously we both know Ozzy very, very well. He still lives in the area. Can you talk about that relationship? Because Chris has always kind of paid respect to all the veteran goalies that he worked with, but when he talks about Vernie, he just lights up. I mean, because you're in competition with each other, but you kind of know you're a veteran. You're there to mentor him too. But how come it was just such a great tandem? You two were great. You won the Jennings Trophy in 95, 96. So together. So can you talk about that relationship a bit?
Well, we're both from Alberta, and have that hockey mentality, and I think we have that mentality that we just do everything for the team, and it's a team game and things like that. And I think one of the first things he just said, "Did you want number 30?" And I said, "No, you can have it. I don't need to have number 30 because I wore number 30 for years in Calgary." And I said, "No, I'm fine with changing my number." And I think that he respected that, and we got off to a good footing right after the start, and we were supporting each other and things like that, and we just created this nice friendship, and there was no animosity, and we were very supportive of each other going through it all. So I even remember like the last year that I played, and Ozzy was playing very well during the season and things like that, and when Scotty made a decision later to maybe go with me in playoffs and things like that. And, Chris handled it very professionally, very well, very supportive. And, I just knew that I had to hold up my end of the bargain. Both of us had to play well, or the other guy was going to get an opportunity. And what better situation for a hockey team to have is two goaltenders battling it out for for playing time. And I think that was a very good scenario to have. I know some teams like to just one goaltender and go with one goaltender, and nowadays it's so hard with all the injuries and things like that. And I just think that the two tandem goalie situation with an older guy and a younger guy worked very well, and both goalies were very capable of playing.
You know, it certainly did, and you know, Fox Sports Detroit is going to be showing the '97 playoffs on the day that this airs on November 5th on Thursday. They'll show Game 1 of the 1997 Stanley Cup Finals, but I want to go back because this is almost forgotten. March 26, 1997, a day that will live forever in Red Wing lore. Not only do you get your 300th career victory, but you score a unanimous decision against your old, I don't know, nemesis or not, Patrick Waugh. Going into that game, Mike, yeah, I mean, you guys had I don't know if Detroit fans were aware of this. You guys go back quite a ways, and I'm kind of curious, did you see March 26th coming? What was going through your mind? I don't know how many times Ozzy talks about his fight with Waugh all the time. I haven't really heard you kind of, you know, go on about it, but what was that whole atmosphere like that night?
Well, it from a goaltending standpoint, it wasn't one of my better outings. Let me put it to you that way, because I did not play well that night. And it was ironic that the two guys that started the fight was Larry Onoff and Forsberg at the blue line. They start the brawl basically, and then it just kind of then Darren McCarty went after Claude Lemieux that we've had. You know, he a few years ago he hit Chris Draper and where he broke his jaw and things like that from behind when he was going off to the bench. So that kind of created it. And then Patrick Waugh leaves the net, and I'm like, okay, if he leaves, I got to leave type thing. And I'm like, oh, for crying out loud. So he came out, and and him and Shanahan were mixed up, and then Adam Foote, I got a hold of Adam Foote's arm, and he's looking at me, and he goes, get out of here type thing. And then I don't know how it happened. Then Patrick Waugh kind of jumped on me from kind of behind a bit, and then we just kind of tussled, and I got lucky with one of the punches that I caught him with a left over the eye. And I know that the Red Wing fans and things like that love the Bobby Probert and Joey Kosher in the days with all the fighting, and once they saw blood, they declared victory for Vernon, I guess, type thing. And no, but that was just the competitiveness in all of us that stepped up. And I don't know whoever won or lost or whatever, but that whole scenario basically solidified our team and our team, and united us, that we were all for one another. And it just grew from there. And then they went on and won many more Stanley Cups, and they had the great tradition. They were good there for well over 20 years and things like that. So it was a great time to be part of all of that. And, that's just one of the great memories that I have of Detroit. And I remember Ozzy, because I thought for sure I'd get kicked out of the game because I left the crease. I got in a fight. I should have been ejected from the game. And I'm sitting in my stall, and Ozzy comes up. They want you back in the net. And I go, why I have to been kicked out? You go in. And he says, no, you have to go back in. And I'm like, are you kidding? So I go back in, and I think we were losing the game at like 5-3 or something. And
right.
You know what? I don't, for some reason, the team came back and won that game. Like, I don't even think they got another shot on me the rest of the game. The guys just came out and played, and we won that game. And lo and behold, they come up to me and they go, well, that was your 300 victory. I didn't even know it was my 300 victory. Even people around Calgary here talk about it, and the kids and things like that. And I think I'm more known for the fight with Patrick Waugh than I am winning 2 Stanley Cups or even a Conn Smythe trophy.
Yeah, it's funny how things, how people process things and what is a vivid memory. I mean, it was an excellent moment in Red Wing history, and I agree with you. That really did solidify the Red Wings and got them over that hump. Let's go to the '97 playoffs. you beat Colorado in the Western Conference Final. Then you play Philadelphia, the Legion of Doom. You're the starting goaltender. Ozzy started most of the season, or was kind of number one there for a while, but then Scotty comes up to you and says, you're starting the playoffs. Were you surprised that you got the nod in net?
I was a little surprised. And when Scotty told me to, I'm going with you in playoffs and get yourself ready, because he told me about a month before playoffs, and he said you're going to start playing a lot more, and it and how I played from there on in really determined if I was going to probably play in playoffs. But he was getting me ready to go, and I was well rested. I was working hard at practice and keeping myself in good shape and stuff like that. And I was just thankful to get that opportunity again to prove myself, to prove that I can still play in the NHL and get an opportunity like that. So I was definitely very thankful, and obviously I took advantage of it. But I was fortunate enough to get myself on a roll. When you're on a roll a bit, you can get in there for a couple months, and that's what happened with me and the team. We just, like I said, we gelled together. We had a goal, and we never wavered from that goal, any of us. And we were a very focused hockey team.
You win the Conn Smythe Trophy, MVP of the playoffs, 16-4, goals against a 1.76, save percentage 927. You get a shutout Colorado 6-0 in the Western Conference Final. But I am curious, Mike, did a fan throw a cigar at you right at the end of the game? I mean, you have a cigar, and no other Red Wing does. I mean, that picture, it's kind of a classic moment again in Detroit. Where did the cigar come from?
I don't know if someone had read an article, but I didn't mind having the odd cigar. And I don't know, some fan threw it at me, and I grabbed it, and I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. And I don't know who the fan was. To this day, I have no idea who the fan was.
Well, hopefully they're watching, and maybe you two can connect. Winning that 97, the Stanley Cup, 42-year drought. I can remember years ago, it was at Matthew Dandino's birthday party. You and I were sitting together. I don't know how that happened to happen. And I remember telling you, because you had won the cup with Calgary in '89, your hometown. I said, Mike, trust me, if you guys win this cup, this town is going to explode. With that said, that whole experience, that whole 97, how can you sum that up? What does that mean to Mike Vernon and his career to be a Stanley Cup champion with the Detroit Red Wings?
Well, I think it sums up my career. That I never gave up, and I had 10 years in between winning a cup in Calgary and winning a cup in Detroit. And when you're an NHL player or goaltender, you have to prove yourself every day. And and I took pride in it. It just self-rewarding for myself to know that I had a good career in the National Hockey League and put up some decent numbers. And I'm just personally proud of what I accomplished. And if the Hall of Fame recognizes that, great. If not, I know that I can live with myself. And I met some great people along the way, and I just have some great fond memories. My kids always ask me you should write a book, and people say you should write a book, but I don't think I'll ever write a book. But I have some great memories. I have some great stories to tell and things like that. And it's something that I dreamed of this when I was a kid. So my dream came true, and it's an outstanding life that I had in a career.
Well, I'll tell you, Mike, I'm a bit of a dreamer myself, and my dream is that you and Ozzy go into the Hall of Fame together, same ceremony. That would be completely wild. I hope it happens. You never know, and I'm still going to hold out hope. But I don't say this very often. But being a native Detroiter, being a lifelong Red Wing fan, to have a guy like you wear the red and white, to wear that winged wheel, It doesn't get much better than you, Mike Vernon. Thank you very, very much for joining us here on The Headliner. I really appreciate it, and we'll talk very, very soon. Thank you, Mike.
Great. Thanks, Art, and appreciate everything. And hi, Michigan.
All right. That'll do it for this edition of The Headliner presented by Miller Lite. Miller Lite, the original light beer. It's only 96 calories. It tastes delicious, and it is available for delivery. Daniela, back to you.
Thank you, Art. Really enjoyed hearing from Mike Vernon. He had some great stories. Right now, we're going to get into Let's Socialize, presented by AAA. And of course, we're going to bring in Carly Johnston for this one. Carly, what do you have for us today?
All right. First, I would just like to say I've told Art happy birthday, but not on the stream. So Art, happy birthday, my man. You know you're one of my favorites.
Carly, right back at you. It's very, very sincere, very heartfelt. I do appreciate it.
Good. I'm glad. Well, first up, we do have a question for you from a fan on the Red Wings Facebook. So from Terry Allen Martin, question for Art. Does Mike Hoffman make sense for Detroit if he can be had at 2 years, $4 million? Happy birthday to Art. You're a lot of fun.
Well, thank you very much there, Terry. I appreciate that. I would say this. Mike Hoffman is a great player. He had 59 points last year for Florida. He has 360 points in about 500 NHL career games. So I'm not so sure. I mean, he's intriguing, and I don't know if Steve would turn it down or not, but I kind of think that Mike Hoffman is even though he's been more consistent than Bobby Ryan, I think that Steve at this point likes his forward core. I think he likes the makeup. And I also think he's more eager to see what some of these young Red Wing forwards would do. But boy, Hoffman, I mean, he scores everywhere he goes. I mean, he is a goal scorer, 20 goal scorer, and that's at a premium in the NHL. So I like the idea, but I think where the Red Wings are, maybe the cost, although money isn't really a hindrance for the Red Wings or for Steve. I would think that at this point, oh boy, that's an intriguing one. I think where they're at with the veterans, I think they're pretty set at top 6. They want to give some of the young players, some of the young forwards an opportunity, see where they're at. I mean, if you bring in Hoffman, does that take time away from Zadina? You don't want to take time away from Zadina. You want Zadina to grow. You have Robbie Fabre, Sam Gagne, obviously. I just said Bobby Ryan. And then, of course, the top 3. I'm just thinking they might be overloaded at forward. But if Mike Hoffman were to come to Steve Yzerman and say, hey, I grew up, I had your poster in my bedroom. I'd love to play for your team. You can get me for a sweetheart deal. Give me $750,000. That would never happen. But Steve would probably do that. But geez, where the Red Wings are at right now, what Steve has already done, I'm not sure that Hoffman fits into the plan, although he's a great player. I mean, he's a goal scorer. I mean, he obviously would make the Red Wings better, but how much better? I would be this way. I'm sure Steve probably looks at it this way. If I bring Mike Hoffman in, are we a playoff team? Probably not. So I'd rather go with with the young guys and let's see what they do and get this little bit, as I like to say, baptism under fire. So I like the idea. Boy, do I like the idea. I just don't see it happening.
Okay. So, I mean, wouldn't be a bad thing, but you don't think it's going to happen. All right. Moving on to Daniela's question. All right. We have for you, do you think AJ Hinch can continue the Tigers' momentum from this season? That's interesting.
Well, I think the answer is yes. But one interesting thing that we haven't really talked about, I mean, AJ Hinch hasn't managed in a year, and I'm not saying he won't still be a good manager, but it might take him a little while to get back into the swing of things. I mean, look at Art. He takes one night off of preparation and he's rusty. So we don't know what's going to happen with the Tigers manager here. But no, I'm just kidding about that, Art. You weren't rusty today. It's your birthday. I shouldn't rip on you. But
actually, I want to thank you both for carrying the show today. Really, And to all our guests, I think everybody stepped up their game because obviously I was reveling in the celebration of being part of the November 5 tribe. So thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, I'm just kidding. So yes, I think will continue the momentum. I think he will. I think we've heard him say that he really takes pride in developing players and young players, and that's exactly what the Tigers have on their roster. So I think, yes, he will be able to continue the momentum. A lot of that will have to do with the timeline of next season, which is still up in the air. So hopefully we know some more soon, and that AJ Hinch is able to meet his players, talk with his players, and get to it and start managing again. But yes, I do think we will continue the momentum. I think AJ Hinch will be really good with our young guys, and I think he will help the Tigers take the next step.
Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. Last question. Arts, for you. This is a fun one. What was the best birthday present you've ever received?
Oh, no.
Well, do we really want to go there? No. With that said, I guess as you get older, you start to get a little more reflective. Not that, you sit down and you kind of look at your life, but I think the best birthday presents I ever received were the birthday parties that my mother threw for me with the neighborhood kids. Because yeah, well, I can't help it. Because back then, I was probably a little brat. I demanded a party, but when you look back at, all the kids in the neighborhood would come, and and I'm a baby boomer, so there were a lot of kids. You know what I mean? These parties, every house had at least 2 children in it, if not more, on the block, and so I look back and just the work and what she did, and they were all themed, and she'd make a cake, and she cooked everything. And all the kids coming around and just having a great time. It always made my birthday really, really special. I've said this before. My mom was born on Halloween, October 31st, and her sister, my Aunt Helen, was born on November 10th. So my mom wanted to be born obviously on her birthday. That didn't happen. And then my Aunt Helen wanted me to be born on November 10th, and I was born on November 5th, square in the middle of both of them. So it was always kind of a special week, and leading up. So again, I think as you get older, you look back. Sure, there were some great presents and things that I got, but the memories that I really, really remember was, they were down in the basement, all the kids coming over, and I'm talking 30, 40 kids. As I said, baby boomers a lot, just hanging out with my buddies, having my mom put together a good party. All the adults, my dad and his buddies were, upstairs, celebrating a little bit too, as the moms brought the kids downstairs and hung out. So it was a big social gathering, really good neighborly thing to do. I just really enjoyed it. I really remember those days, and they were great. They were really, really great. But I've had a lot of good birthday parties. I'm not. I just like people. I like being with people. I like hanging with my friends. So whenever I can do that, whether it's my birthday or not, it's a good time. So, but I would say those birthday parties, my mother, from the time I was probably 6 to 10 or something, 10 or 11, then I got to be a little too cool for parties. You know what I mean? I still trick or treated, trust me, but I was a little too cool. And I don't need a birthday party, Mama. I'm a little too cool now. Okay. Give me a little, buy me an Alice Cooper album and I'm fine. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry you have to socially distance and have less than 10 people for your birthday party this year, but it's fun to celebrate virtually with your 2 best friends, Danielle and I, right?
No question about it. I want to ask you something. This year, I was allowed to pick out my birthday cake, and I haven't picked it up yet. But bakery that I go to, they're making me a birthday cake, and the baker said, "Well, do you want Happy Birthday Art or Happy Birthday Arthur?" And I said to him, I said, "If you can fit it, just write Happy Birthday, Mr. Wonderful." And that's what they're doing. I can't wait to unveil that cake. I think it's pretty. Do you think that's a little pretentious of me? A little bit too stuck up?
No, you are Mr. You are Mr.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I can't wait till people see it. Oh, your cake looks beautiful.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Mr. Wonderful.
Please post it on Instagram. Looking forward to seeing
Yeah,
it.
you know what?
Well,
I definitely will. I'll thank you, Carly. I'll take a picture of it for sure.
Good. I hope you have a joyous birthday and year to come.
Thank you.
Carly already started celebrating her birthday. She started last night.
Yeah, but thank you, Danielle, for that.
Yeah, really, yeah. Whoa, what's in there?
It was Gatorade.
Electrolyte.
It's 5 o'clock.
We
So
always end the show on the best note.
so we can all celebrate art. Cheers, Art.
Yeah, exactly.
Cheers.
I have a coffee cup.
Thank you.
Kombucha.
This ain't water.
All right,
Empty coffee cup.
Let's Socialize. A big thank you to AAA for presenting Let's Socialize. AAA says thank you with free roadside assistance for first responders and healthcare workers fighting to defeat COVID-19. You protect us by going to work every day. Let AAA protect you on the way there and back. And we have come to the end of another edition of The Word on Woodward presented by Raymond. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you missed anything, make sure you check out the Word on Woodward YouTube page, or you can listen to the show as a podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. Make sure you check that out. All of our past shows are on there as well. And tonight, make sure you tune into Fox Sports Detroit at 8 o'clock. They're going to be airing the 1997 Stanley Cup Championship Game 1, so you definitely want to watch that. And then following that, you can watch the Draft Review Show featuring our very own birthday boy, Art Regner, Ken Kale, Ken Daniels, Trevor Thompson, and John Keating. So make sure you check that out. A lot of great draft info in there, and Steve Eiserman even joins the show. Again, thank you guys so much for joining us today, and we'll be back next week on Tuesday with an exclusive interview with Brian Burke, so you definitely won't want to miss it. Show starts at noon as always. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you then.